Hi, friends. Welcome to the Mobile Bev Pros podcast, a podcast dedicated to providing mobile bar and event professionals with the information they need to succeed. I'm your host, business coach, and founder of the Mobile Bar Academy, Sarah Murphy. In each episode, the Mobile Bev Pros team will bring you industry experts, information, anecdotes, and opinions with the goal of assisting you in building a profitable, sustainable, and successful business that supports you in creating wealth. I'm excited to share with you today's episode, so let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. We are going to be posting this podcast in two places again, because we at Mobile Bev Pros have a core belief that community is first and foremost in everything that you build. And so today we're going to be talking about radical connection. It's so relevant for entrepreneurs who are trying to build their small empires, because when you are creating brand awareness, we recommend you do that through networking and creating meaningful connections with the people in your life and in adjacent businesses and in your local community. And we're going to be posting it on Crowns and Chaos because it is the last and final pillar for the Villains Code. It really is just going to put a nice bow on everything we've talked about prior. So up until this point, we have done a lot of work on you getting to know you so that you can be the most authentic and most fully expressed version of yourself. Because we can't create radical connection when we are posturing, when we have walls up, when we are trying to be something that we are not, when we are pretending. And so instead, we're going to break down those walls. And at the core of radical connection, of building a radical community, is the ability to be vulnerable, both within yourself and externally. And if you're like, Dawn, what does it mean to be vulnerable with myself? I'm with me all the time. Are you? Most of us are hiding from ourselves. This is where the shadow side of the psyche comes from. It's that which we are pretending doesn't exist within us. And getting vulnerable with ourself is leaning into the things that trigger us, leaning into the things that make us uncomfortable, stepping into our power through recognizing that the discomfort is what creates growth. Whether that's that you're uncomfortable to go to a networking event, lean in. Or you're uncomfortable to have this conversation with your grandma, lean in. Or you're uncomfortable to admit that you actually like a thing that people say you shouldn't like, lean in, right? Discomfort creates growth, and it is at its core how we get truly vulnerable with ourselves and with the people around us.
We live in a highly individualistic culture and society, and there are these assumptions. We even say like self-made millionaire, or, they started from nothing and they created this massive amounts of success. And that's never the case. No woman is an island. And all too often, the people that we work with and the people that we see are literally trying to do it all themselves. And they see it almost as a weakness if they find themselves needing support. We've had people so much as tell us that they're hesitant to ask for help. They're hesitant to lean on people because they're afraid that people will think less of them, that they're not capable, they're not competent, that maybe they don't deserve success if they can't do it themselves. And these are all stories. These are all narratives to keep you small, because there's no such thing as self-made. And I mean that in every sense of the word. If you ever see someone who's a millionaire and they're quote unquote self-made, they've had mentors. They've had somebody either lend them money, expertise, time, energy. They have had employees that have given their own time, energy, expertise in exchange for compensation, sometimes not enough compensation, in order to make sure that the person who's the self-made millionaire has lined their pockets sufficiently to be able to call themselves a millionaire ever. Then you've got customers who have purchased the product, the service that that person has utilized to make themselves a millionaire. So there's no such thing as self-made, period. Which is why, to your point earlier, we believe that radical connection and community is the foundation of success in all things, life and in business. It is the relationships that you make that will determine your level of success. And that's like full stop. The relationships that you make are going to determine your level of success. And so when we tell everybody, like, start by building community and connections and relationships, like authentic relationships, we talk about in-person networking as being the very most important manner in which local businesses or businesses that operate within a local community utilize or should utilize in order to build the foundation of their visibility strategy. We tell people, like, you're not there to sell. You're there to be visible, you're there to be known, you're there to build relationships. And that's what this is. If you're in the Villain Era Challenge, we started off with radical honesty and radical truth. And radical honesty is really about becoming vulnerable. It's trying to explain something utilizing lots and lots of words, right? That process builds connection. The process of sharing lots of words with people that, some are complimentary, some are not so complimentary. Because when we're being radically honest, we aren't perfect beings. And it is actually the process of sharing your imperfections that creates connections and relationships and allows people to feel safe in not being perfect in your presence, because you've shared the fact that you're not perfect. You don't have it all figured out. You've made mistakes in the past. And that's the first hump in building relationships, is actually trusting or entrusting another person with that imperfection. The brain science actually shares this with us. And so sometimes when I'm talking about networking with people, I share some of these like neuroscience hacks as to how to connect with people right away. And what we know is that if you are entering in a little circle, you walk into the networking room, nobody there, and you kind of shoulder yourself into like this little circle of people, and you drop a pen. For example, maybe you're holding like your cocktail and like your like little plate of hors d'oeuvres, and you're juggling a bunch of things, and like you drop a thing, a pen or a business card. If you ask somebody, hey, would you mind picking that up for me? I'm so sorry. Like I dropped it. I can't really, and they pick it up for you. The neuroscience behind that is they automatically like you more than they did before they handed you that thing, because we are wired to be codependent. And so because you entrusted them to support you, now they, for no reason other than the fact this is the way our brains operate, they trust you a little bit more than they did before you asked them to pick up that thing. As humans, we are wired to need each other. We are wired to support each other. We are wired to want to see bits and pieces of our own imperfection in others. And yet, we have so many business owners out here posturing. They're bending over backwards to the point of breaking to prove to everyone that they're perfect, that they don't need support, that they can do it all themselves, and that they don't need anybody in order to do and accomplish the things that they're trying to do. And that is harmful to the psyche. It's harmful to their future success. And it's harmful to anything that they would try and accomplish that is bigger than themselves.
One of the things that comes up really often when we support, especially women who are heavy in their masculine energy, they struggle to ask for or receive support. This is something that you and I both walked through. And a lot of times this is given to us systemically and culturally, that in this very masculine society, women are pitted against each other. Women are made to feel like they have to one up the other woman in the room. Whatever it is, there's not an alliance. There's always like I'm doing suspicious eyes right now for those of you who can't see me, right? We're always trying to be better than the woman next to us. And in my opinion, that was done very much on purpose, because women together are far more potent, and actually people together are far more potent, right? One of the things that you mentioned when we came into this was shared power is multiplied power, right? And we see a lot of women who struggle because they think it makes them less than to ask for support or to rely on support. And this is where we see a huge boom in postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, where we see a massive gap in autoimmune disease between women and men. I think like 80% or something just absolutely staggering of autoimmune disorder is found in women. And that's because we weren't meant to do it alone. Women were meant to live side by side with other women. We were meant to raise our babies together. We were meant to give birth together. We were meant to sing and howl at the moon together. And we've seen what this has done to society. And so when we have women who look out into the world and see other women as competition rather than as sacred beings, as other women who they can connect with, we have a sickness in our society. You could call that sickness the patriarchy, right? This patriarchal belief that my success has to happen in a vacuum. And that's making us actually physically ill, but also mentally and emotionally ill, and systemically ill, and culturally ill. We want to start breaking down what it looks like to create radical connection with the people around you. And I love that you said sharing your flaws. That for me has always been, it's almost like an icebreaker for the women that I connect with, the people that I support. I just show up and I am gloriously flawed and imperfect. And then they feel liberated to really be who they truly are and to be vulnerable with me, because I'm not attempting to be anything other than I truly am. And I have a lot of flaws, as do we all, right? And so we want to talk today about how to create radical connection in your world and what it looks like and some of its advantages. But I do want to start with looking at vulnerability as a weakness versus a superpower, a foundation for genuine collaboration.
Yeah, I think that if you were to look at, let's just say social media, for example, there's something very voyeuristic about social media and how we have adopted what success looks like on social media. And it's not the buttoned up, scripted, professional recordings. That's not what succeeds and thrives on social media. People love the behind the scenes. They love the messy. They love the little peek into the world of others. And that's because that's what we crave. We crave real connection. We crave realness. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing that succeeds, because what we see on social media, especially with the new like trad wife trend, where like the ballerina farms, where there's like this perfect little family and they live on a farm, but they're always spotless and clean. And they have like millions of, like, I feel like people aspire. They look at that and they aspire. They're like, that is a thing of fantasy for me. And like, I read fantasy. I love fantasy, right? There's a place for fantasy. But then there's also this more realistic place where we're seeking out to be seen and heard and understood. And that comes from like the very core of us as people. We want to know there are other people like us in the world, that other people think the way we do. And that's one of the beautiful things that social media has really opened up. Like if you come from a very small little town, you can feel like a black sheep. I mean, I graduated with 42 people in my graduating class in high school. Everyone was their own black sheep. You know what I mean? There's only 42 people. So the mere chance of you finding someone who really connects and understands is very small. At least I felt that way. Like certainly there were cliques, but like when you've been in the same class with people for 12 years at that point, like everyone knows everybody and everything about you. And you come to realize like nobody here is like me. They share one interest, but not certainly, all of them. And so when you go on social media and there's someone halfway across the world that has a very similar experience to you or feels the way that you do about a certain thing, suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm not abnormal, right? Because everyone is looking for that connection, that reflection, that their belief systems, that their quirks, that, and we see this with people, like suddenly everybody has ADHD because people are reflecting out to them like, oh, I do this, that, and the other thing, and I have ADHD. And you're like, oh, I feel normal now because that person has this, that, and the other thing. And like, they have a reason for it. And like, we all struggle with the same thing. Like, I feel validated. There's power in that. The challenge is that there isn't a whole lot of real connection just by seeing yourself reflected. When it comes to getting in real rooms with real people in your local community, that's where we see people go, whoop, that feels unsafe. So that's where the Villain Era Challenge came in for us, because you and I are trying to help people feel safe in their own body, in their own spirit, in their own authentic expression of themselves, because that is required before you go out and try and hold space with others. If you don't feel safe in who you are, and then you try and enter a room with other people, it's very easy to just try and show up the way you think that those people need you to show up or want you to show up. But that does not build connection. That may build a community and may build a relationship wherein you kind of hang out and have conversations, but it becomes transactional at that point. It becomes a, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back, or we're here because we are lonely, or because you have a business and I have a business and we're both trying to help each other out. And like that can be replaced as soon as they find another person that does what you do, that maybe is willing to give them more of a cut, or they're willing to do a little bit more than you were willing to do, right? That's not what we want. We want people who are so ingrained in who we are in our communities. They know who we are, that they appreciate our idiosyncrasies, like good and bad. That's the other thing that I really want to make sure that people recognize here, is that when you're building community based on radical connection, you don't have to have all of the same ideals, all of the same belief sets, all of the same. In true communities, you will have people within those communities that maybe they're a little quirky. Maybe they say the wrong thing sometimes. Maybe they are controversial. Maybe they came from a really hard background. Maybe they have more money than you. Maybe they are different in a lot of different ways, but you make space for that because you recognize that diversity makes things stronger. Diversity makes the value of the community as a whole, like it's a symbiotic relationship. The sum of all of its parts are worth more than the individual parts. But if everybody's all the same, you don't get that same return, like different connections, different backgrounds, different experiences, different viewpoints, makes the whole stronger. And so that kind of brings us into this other thing that I think the Villain Era Challenge really does a good job of, is because we try and make people so comfortable with themselves that they're capable of being in the presence of differing opinions and differing viewpoints without losing their power, and recognizing that those that have different viewpoints and are not coming from the same perspective actually strengthen the overall community and don't weaken it. And like we have seen historically, people who avoid certain networking events or avoid certain communities because they're different, they have different viewpoints and they feel triggered by that. And so they then just like avoid it. You and I, we love a good trigger because we know that there's gold in that for us. Like if we're triggered by something, there's gold there, right? And so when we're talking about building radical connection, like sometimes that means holding space for someone you don't agree with. Sometimes that means going out of your way to do a thing for someone that like isn't really a friend, but is part of the greater community. And that strengthens the overall process of building radical connection, is recognizing that just because they agree with you and you see yourself reflected in people doesn't mean that those are the only people that you should build community with.
Yeah, you're leaning on the nuance here. Social media has done a great job of defining and confining to a detrimental degree, because now my TikTok has me convinced of so many things that I don't actually see in the world. You know what I mean? Like people aren't operating in the world the way that my TikTok would have me believe the world works. And so TikTok's done a great job of going out and finding people who say shit I like to hear. That's not how the world works, right? And so we want to introduce the nuance in somewhere between individualism and community. And I think that the way that I would like to paint this picture is through the eyes of our Lord and Savior, Jonathan Van Ness, who told us last night on Queer Eye that individualism was really the art, and I'm paraphrasing, is the art of centering your own self-expression. But when we do that, we're not asking everyone else to be like us. We're not only hanging out in rooms where everyone's self-expression is identical to us. That negates the point of centering your self-expression, because you are unique. Just like your fingerprints, there's no two that are the same. 8-9 billion people on this planet. Nobody has the same fingerprints. How many possible combination of fingers can we have? Right? Apparently, it's infinite. Right? And so your self-expression is the same. And so we don't want you to box yourself in and only hang out with people who see the world that you do, because to your point, there's no growth there. Now, with that being said, where are you hanging out and you are not welcome. That's a different conversation. People who have belief sets that harm your well-being or that harm the expansion of the collective, people who have viewpoints who say your version of self-expression is wrong, that's a different conversation. And so we have this love and light group who kind of gets it, kind of doesn't, saying things like just cut everybody out. If they don't worship the Galactic Federation, then just cut them out. The problem with that is that, first of all, how will we support others? Second of all, how will we truly know our own depths if we're never triggered? We've isolated ourselves so that we are never, that's not learning, right? Like one of my favorite things to do is to form a new belief and then find ways to shatter that belief system, right? Because then I grow. That's how I evolve. The version of Dawn that is on this podcast right now is not even close to the version of Dawn that you all heard on the podcast last year. Period. Not even close. I don't have the same mentors. I don't follow the same groups. I don't have the same viewpoints because I worked diligently to shatter those viewpoints, even though they were core to me. And so centering your own self-expression is not necessarily about cutting people out, but it's also not about being in rooms that are a danger to you. Okay. So like if you are part of the LGBTQIA community, probably don't go hang out in the church. Not safe, right? But you can have conversations with people who come, to your point, from different backgrounds, who are open to new ideas and possibilities and aren't looking to take away your rights as a woman because you should be property and not a living, breathing being, right? So we want to ride that nuance there. Like, don't put yourself in situations where there's potential for harm, and also do put yourself in situations where there's potential for growth.
I love that you brought this up because I think perhaps when I said that one of our goals is to put people in their seat of power and to make them more comfortable holding power, what was kind of implied there, but wasn't spelled out in the way that you just so eloquently did, is that the caveat there is that to do that work, you have to feel safe. And when you're holding power, you feel safe. When you're in your seat of power, like nothing can throw you from that seat of power. You feel powerful because you feel safe. And when you are in rooms where you don't feel safe, you can't sit in that seat of power. And so you can't listen to someone spew or share something that is contrary to all of your values and beliefs unless you feel safe with your own values and beliefs. And a lot of the work that we do with people, and you hear it ad nauseum, I literally just talked about this in the office hours yesterday with the Mobile Bar Academy members, is that so much of the work that we do as entrepreneurs means starting with total clarity around your mission, vision, and values. If you don't have total clarity around your mission, vision, and values as a business, you are going to be saying yes to all things that are in alignment, out of alignment. You're going to be wasting a lot of energy on things that aren't going to benefit your business because they're not your ideal client there. Maybe they're the wrong positioning. Maybe the strategic partners have a totally different value set and are taking you further from what it is you're trying to achieve. The same can be said for your life. So if you don't have true clarity around your mission, vision, and values as a person, as an individual, then it becomes more unsafe for you to show up in spaces where there are people that have differing value sets, belief sets, that are on a mission. They literally see the world differently. So all of their efforts are going to be working in potential opposition to those of your own. And so one of the things that I think you and I have done a really good job of is that we feel safe in a lot of spaces that others don't. So if you are protecting your peace, the Love and Light crew likes to use that, by, saying no to things, cutting people out of your lives, avoiding certain spaces to protect your peace, that's okay. Do it by all means. Protect your peace if you feel unsafe. But for those of you who do feel safe, by engaging the greater community or increasing your own community and your own connections, you have a bigger, stronger voice in those communities, even if you have differing opinions, because you've built a connection and relationship so that we're no longer just saying, well, they believe this and I believe this, so we can't get along. It's, well, I know that person. I know their heart. I know they're good people. I know that like they're trying to achieve, that maybe I don't like the way they do it. I don't like what they say, but I believe in their greater mission and who they are as a person. If you go back anciently, like you had a small community and everyone relied on each other to like survive. And so like even if they didn't really love the way that they were entirely as a person, they recognized that they needed that person and they were part of the greater community. And that's because they knew more than just their opinions and like the way that they showed up in the world. That's what I'm wishing for people, whether you're just doing personal development work or you're doing business development work, is that if you build relationships with people, you're more than just your business. You're more than just your opinions. You are an entity that is multifaceted, multidimensional, and that you have drawn like little bits of connection with people that are outside of just kind of the surface level. That level of engagement in a local community, whether it's for business purposes or individual purposes, it enhances safety. It enhances security, even if there isn't total alignment in belief sets, mission, vision, and values. It just creates a safer world, both for your business and for you individually.
We also want you to be having conversations with people who disagree with you so that potentially your mind is changed, their mind is changed. We want you to look at vulnerability as the willingness to be changed by your connections. Part of that is going to be discerning. Again, we're sharpening the sword of discernment here. What areas of my life, what people in my life are fixed and they won't budge and they won't change. And so to be in their presence, I also can't evolve. Okay, that's a no. You don't got to cut them out, but you can say, hey, I wish you well. Like we don't have literally anything in common. But when you meet people who are of a different political party, it doesn't mean be friends with them and just avoid the conversation of politics. That you're not really being friends. You're not building genuine connections. You are not addressing the elephant or the ass in the room. You see what I'm saying? We want you to be having those conversations and disagreeing so that both of you can be changed by those conversations. If you're not having those conversations, you're posturing. Both of you are like, gosh, this shrimp sure is nice, isn't it? It's a good shrimp. You like this shrimp? And then you go home and you feel vapid on the inside and empty. Nothing juicy and delicious came, right? Like sit with people who vaccinate their kids and people who don't vaccinate their kids and be changed by that. Sit with people who voted for Trump and who didn't vote for Trump and be changed by that. Sit with people who are independent. Sit with people from different religions. Sit with people from different parts of the country or different parts of the world and just allow yourself to be expanded by those situations, recognizing that you don't have to agree on everything, but you also don't have to avoid. This comes down to the right to comfort. That's what I really want to say here. I'm just going to get straight to it. Right to comfort is a white supremacist tactic. And when we're in this space of like, I'm entitled to my comfort, that's what in enlightenment. Last night I was reading this beautiful book, just started it. It's called The Shakti Woman, for all women who want to like be in their rage, be in their physical embodiment. 10 out of 10 recommend. She used the word enlightenment in a very masculine, whitewashed type of way. And I saw immediately that word was enlightenment or enlightenment. And it became blaringly obvious to me that too is repackaged and repurposed Puritan consciousness. And Puritan consciousness seeks to make everything white. It seeks to make everything clean and sterile and only as I would have it, only like me. That was the note that I wrote down. The opposite of connection is that everything must be only like me, right? And that's the Puritan consciousness. And when we move into like what I have playfully and not so playfully termed endarkenment, we move into the shadows and we disrupt at our core our own beliefs. We disrupt rooms that we walk into. And that requires you to feel, to your point, safe inside first so that you can feel safe outside. So don't like throw all caution to the wind and go throw yourself into a situation where you're not going to feel safe like right now today if you haven't done the inner work. But do the inner work, because it is really rewarding. Then you have conversations that are deep and meaningful where people disagree, and you leave and your cup is still filled. You leave and you're so juiced up. Maybe it's that you love what you love even more now that you've had that conversation of disagreement, right? But you won't know that if you just stick to your little right to comfort. All is love and light, only positive vibes. And that's what happens. People who are mourning or grieving, they'll come in and they'll say, I lost somebody, and everybody will say, positive vibes your way, sending you love and light. And what they're saying is, please don't bring your realness into this room. Now, they don't realize that. That's a subconscious pattern, but that's what they're saying. They're saying, no, no, please don't hurt in front of me. Ooh, gross. Ooh, gross. Don't they have like therapists for that or something? I don't want to see your grief. I don't want to see your sadness. Don't bring your rage around here. Guys, this is the illness, at least of the Western world.
I agree. I think that we as individuals have a hard time holding space for big emotions. We've been told that like that's unsafe. We feel unsafe when someone has, as a parent, and you see our children throwing a big ass temper tantrum, or maybe you're in a grocery store and another child that is not your own is having a big ass temper tantrum. It like fills you, right? I remember when I was still nursing, you'd hear another baby cry and like your boobs would fill up, and it's like not my baby, right? But it is my problem. Evolutionarily, I make it my problem. And so when people come in and I'm like nice and regulated, I've been doing my meditation, I'm nice and centered, and I encounter someone or something out there that's triggering, that they're having a big emotion. And so like now I suddenly can send, because people are empathetic. We're supposed to, right? We have these little mirror neurons where when someone frowns or someone cries, like it makes us want to cry, right? And like that's because no problem should be our own. We're communal beings. And so when someone else brings to you grief, sadness, rage, we're like, no, 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 you keep that. Love and light. I hope you feel better soon. I hope you're able to transition through the processes of grief quickly. Time heals all wounds, right? We get further and further from the thing. Instead of becoming really adept at holding big emotions and allowing them to just flow through us, because that's really what emotions want to do. They just want to move through the body, but we tense up. We're like, oh, I don't want to feel that. And so then it feels very unsafe, right? Because it's like in our body, we don't know what to do with it. Not sharing other people's grief, not sharing other people's burden, not sharing, that's what's created all the walls in society. That's their problem, not my problem. Maybe they should have worked harder. Maybe they should have gone to church on Sundays. Maybe they should have gone to school here instead of there. Maybe they shouldn't have slept with that person and now they have this baby. Like that's their problem. Instead of recognizing it as the communal problem that all of us are experiencing. There's no person in this country that does not share the ailments, the burdens. Oh, what is that quote? My husband told it to me once upon a time. It's from the Bible, and it's like how he lives his life. And it's something that Jesus said, like, you do for me that which you do for the least of us. And I'm totally butchering that, because if it's not clear by all these other podcasts, like, I do not know the Bible, certainly not enough to quote it. But I think the sentiment there is that we were always supposed to be a community. We're always supposed to share big things, big emotions, the things worth celebrating and the things worth mourning. And we do a very good job of not wanting to deal with the hard things and trying to only focus on the good things. And that's a disservice, because the bad things are what trigger the need for action. If we see something that is, for lack of a better term, like negative or harmful, we should have big emotions about that so that we can be stirred into action to change those things. If there's someone in our community, someone we're connected to, that is enduring a hardship, whether it's a grief, whether it's a financial situation that they need support with, we should help aid-wise, whatever way we can, whether that's a listening ear, whether it's providing a little bit of financial support where we can, whether it's helping them make phone calls or create connections that can help, or voting to change your local laws to provide maybe a reallocation of resources or protections for those that are the most vulnerable. But when we close ourselves off and we live in echo chambers and we only hang out with people that are similar economically, that are similar in belief sets, that are similar in all the things, we fail to see it. And because we fail to see it, we fail to support. And that makes us weaker as an overall community.
The scripture that you're referencing there is Matthew 25:40. It says, "And the king will answer them, I assure you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." As a practitioner of Christ consciousness, I can tell you that everyone is an extension of you. And when you wall yourself off from the people around you, you're building walls within. As you were talking, I could just see like cubicles as a shamanic metaphor for the way that we have created life. Women feel compartmentalized, men are compartmentalized, and as a people, we are compartmentalized. And so there's a war in Ukraine, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. It's not on US soil. There's a war in the Middle East, but those guys are terrorists, right? And so they're not human. That's not a me problem. That's not a me. It is. Everyone is an extension of you. And Osho even says that one man could be tried with all the atrocities on the planet because all of these are me, right? And that's what Christ means when he says, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you also did for me. But we don't want to be inconvenienced. That's what it boils down to these days. That's the right to comfort. Your big feelings, the systemic racism you're dealing with, the trans non-binary issues that are going on. Oh, that doesn't have anything to do with me. That would be inconvenient, right? The homeless man on the corner, that's an inconvenience. I don't want to see that pain. Doesn't he have a shelter to go to somewhere? And so we want to move into a space where when we are building radical connection, whether it be with venues, photographers, people in adjacent industries, as you call them, amplifiers, we are not just looking at who believes exactly what I believe and that will align. It is important that you have brand alignment, right? You don't want to go to a boho venue if you're a very elegant brand, right? That those things, they don't make sense. But you can create radical connection. And guys, like, what does this look like in business, in the real world? And I'll give you an example. We give you a cold outreach strategy in the academy, and you email a local venue who aligns with your brand, and you say, "Hey, my name is Amy. So excited to meet you. Would love to discuss how we can benefit together." Now, do a check. How does that feel in your body? I'm going to run that back. Same scenario. We give you a cold outreach strategy. You find a venue in your area that aligns with your brand, and you see that they love a local coffee shop. They're big supporters of this local coffee shop. So you go to the coffee shop, you buy some coffees, a couple coffees, you buy a gift card, and you go to the venue and you introduce yourself and you say, "I just wanted to bring you a warm cup of coffee. My name is Amy. We're in the same area and I just wanted to get to know you. What are some of your favorite events to run here?" I've made them the expert. I've made them feel good. Even if they don't like that coffee that I brought, the gesture is well received, right? And that person feels like there's been genuine connection. Another scenario, if you're just a person trying to connect with other people, because we reference this a lot where like somebody's grieving and people are like, love and light, positive vibes. Well, what's the alternative? We haven't told you that. And so when someone comes to me and they say, "I just lost my brother last night and this is really hard for me. We were really close," or, "We weren't really close. There's some things I really wish that I would have said to him before he left." And instead of saying love and light, I'm going to say, "Damn, that really sucks. I'm with you in this time of transition. You want to talk about it?" You see what I'm saying? It's not inconvenient. I'm open for you. I'm here to support you. Now, if you've been with us long enough, you've heard us talk about establishing good boundaries. And listen, I'm an energetic master. That shit is so important. You got to know when to take a break. And there are days of the week you can't fucking find me. You can't fucking find me. I'm not doing anything. My face gone. It's like I don't even exist. And that's because I need that space because I support a lot of people doing really rich shit really incredible shit. And so I take my space so that I can come out and be incredible for other people and hold incredible space for their discomfort, for their triggers, for their shadows. And then I retreat and I come back. And if you're somebody who needs the retreat, get to know that so that you can be of higher service to the people around you. But make no mistake that giving is how you receive. And receiving is how you give. Because if everyone is an extension of me, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. What he's saying there, if I give to you, I'm giving to myself. I cannot give to anyone else because you're an extension of me. That's Christ consciousness in a nutshell.
The other thing that you do really well is when you have no more capacity. Let's say someone comes to you and says, my brother died last night, and you just do not have the capacity to sit with those big feels. You do very well at communicating, damn, I'm so sorry that you're juggling all of this right now. I would love to hear more about this. Unfortunately, I don't have the capacity for that today. Do you have space or time for us to meet up for coffee on Friday? And like, I think sometimes people who don't have capacity feel guilty about not being able to have capacity, or pour from an empty cup. So they'll sit and listen, even though they don't have the capacity, which is worse for both parties because one party feels absolutely drained and burdened by that interaction, and the other feels like they're not being heard or supported, and that there's just not a reciprocal interaction there. And if we can all get to a place where we recognize our own needs, again, learning how to hold power means being aware of yourself, your own boundaries, the limits to that power, and being able to communicate effectively. The other thing there, beyond communication, is this concept that, earlier I said power shared becomes power multiplied. Burden shared, same way. What is that saying where many hands
Make light work.
make light work, right? And so a burden or a big emotion that feels too big to hold oneself, when shared with another, becomes a little bit lighter. I think it's important that when we're building community, we recognize that it's, again, I'm coming full circle here. We come from a very individualist culture and a very individualist society where we feel like we have to carry everything ourselves. So when you sit with someone who has a big emotion or needs something of you, there's this assumption that now I need to take it from them. Their big burden now becomes my big burden. And that's not necessarily the case. And most times their big burden becomes your slightly smaller burden and their slightly smaller burden. And so together we can carry way more.
Obligatory support is not support. It's not supportive. It doesn't help anybody, right? Like if I'm going to be breeding resentment because you need my help, then I'm of no help to you. Period. The metaphor I want to use here is something I saw Deepak Chopra said to Oprah. It's just now dawning on me, those two are like two that you see all the time in the same pot, and it's Chopra and Oprah. I can't. Has anybody done that before? Chopra and Oprah? All right, that anyway. But it had to have been in the 80s because everybody had 80s hair and they were all wearing like the low heels with the pantyhose. And he was talking about eating. And he was saying, like, when you eat a meal and you are in a really bad space, like maybe you're having a big emotion that's like not a happy, feel good emotion, and you eat, the cells of that food respond to your energy. And the study that he referenced was done on rabbits, where they were feeding them like a really toxic diet. And some of them had really terrible cholesterol from this diet. And then there was a group of rabbits that were loved and doted upon, and they were given little sweet head scratches and told they were the best little bunnies in the world. And they were fed the same diet, but they did not have high cholesterol. And so the toxicity level that we're seeing in the world, which is everywhere, right? Like orthorexia, you can't eat anything, you can't drink anything, everything's poison, microplastics, da 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 da. To what degree is everything a reflection of us? And what's actually happening is that the world is responding to our vibration as a collective, which is very sick. We've talked a lot about that here. And so we don't want to eat when we're not feeling healthy and well. I'm being very careful not to use words positive and negative. You guys know why. We also don't want to support people when it's obligatory, because then then you hate that person a little bit because you had to watch their dog. You can just say, no, I don't want to do that. Somewhere between those two places, you're going to find your balance and what's available to you. You're going to be able to find how you create radical connection through your own very unique self-expression. Just like your fingerprints and your self-expression are completely unique, so is the way that you're going to connect with others. But we want to be mindful to do this in a way that enables all boats to rise in a high tide, right? We don't need to tear someone else down or make someone else wrong in order for us to feel right or superior, enlightenment, right? Instead, we want to be able to hold ourselves as regulated and well, and be able to know our limits so that we can share the burdens that need to be shared in our communities without feeling inconvenienced or resentful.
I think the last piece that I want to share here, continuing with what you just said, where, someone asked you to watch their dog and you don't want to. And so to avoid that resentment, you just say no. We oftentimes repel or resist connection and community because we take too many things personally. And so if someone tells you no, they don't want to watch your dog, immediately a good portion of people are going to get in their head about, did I say something? Did I do something? I watched their dog. Why won't they watch my dog? There's all sorts of stories that come up at that point. Instead of just being willing to take somebody's no for a no without any reasons. Like, we have a client that had recently shared with us that they pay their own way in all circumstances because they don't want to owe somebody something. To which we reflected, like, who said you owed any? If someone buys you dinner, like, you don't necessarily owe them anything for that. Like, they voluntarily did that. That was a thing they chose to do. And she shared with us that, recently she let someone kind of come over and help her with her mower and like do some yard work. And she felt like she should pay them, but they never asked for payment. Right? We oftentimes have in our head narratives or stories, or we create narratives and stories when we don't know why someone did a thing. And so, like, my invitation here is, like, when you're willing and ready to build community, which includes vulnerability, which includes getting rid of your right to comfort, then when someone says no, full story, full stop, and doesn't clarify and doesn't give you additional context, you let them keep that. Whatever the context is, whatever the reason is, if it's pertinent to you, you need to entrust that they will share that with you. It isn't personal unless they've confirmed it's personal. And like, if you want to ask clarifying questions, just be ready to like potentially get answers that you don't like, or answers that had nothing to do with you, but now you've made it about you by even asking. We have to build up this resistance, this tolerance that not everything is about us, that no is a full answer, and that you just need to be okay with that. We encourage people to use no as a full response without the need to clarify, but we also encourage people to learn how to hear no as a full answer without the need to clarify. You can be in community without knowing everybody's reasons for all things.
Another awesome episode, both here on Crowns and Chaos and on MVP. We appreciate both of these communities so, so very much. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, spending your valuable time with us, and hopefully allowing us to enrich your experience and encouraging you to go out and create radical connection in your communities and in your life. And we will talk to you all on the next episode.
And that wraps up today's episode. I hope it was valuable. I would love to hear from you what you thought. You can drop me a line at hello@mobilebevpros.com or find me on Instagram at mobilebevpros. If you're looking for more valuable mobile bar related content, we have a website full of it. You can find us at www.mobilebevpros.com. And I'd love to see you in our Facebook community, also by the name of, you guessed it, Mobile Bev Pros. Thank you for joining me today, and until next time, cheers.